record. Now recording. Share. Let's share this questionnaire. There it is. Well, this questionnaire has been designed to, in a way, help you focus on some aspects of, let's say, this part of the chapter from Psychology for Language Teachers that you shouldn't be missing, okay? I don't know, have you read it? Did the questions help or not? I can't hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes,
Yes.
I can't hear anybody
Yes.
there. Okay, well, so did the questions help you?
Yes.
Yes.
And what about the type of the language that is being used in this book? How do you find it? Difficult to understand?
No, it wasn't difficult.
Okay.
I think that the texts in linguistic 1 was a bit harder, so now we're like used to that type of language.
All right, all right.
Well, at least in my case.
Okay, all right. Well, it is important that you keep a glossary, or if in case you are in doubt about some words or some concepts, you've got two let's say, possible way outs. You can ask me, or you can check also the glossary, right? Remember I uploaded a glossary of ELT terms, right? That is, I mean, I joined two glossaries together, right? And well, I wanted to have a real complete version of all the possible words that you may come across in ELT books, so that you don't start looking them up in a dictionary that generally deals with, let's say, general English, and you may not perhaps get the right definition for what you want to look and to find out what it is. Well, what is the conventional notion of education? What can you say about that? How do we regard education generally? Or at least, what did you read about that?
It is thought that education is equal to learning.
And tell me, why is it that they are not exactly the same?
So I didn't know this difference, by the way. So it was interesting for me because it seems that education is like a more broad term than teaching, because you can teach something to someone which doesn't have any like meaningful, I know it won't represent anything meaningful for his or her life. But when you educate someone, you're giving them useful information that they're going to like shape the way they see the world, or they use it for their own purposes.
That's it. Perhaps what we can say is that there is a kind of transfer that when you are educating, I mean, the learner does not only learn, let's say, something that it could be in the language, in the target language, but he can apply those concepts to other instances. For example, think about this. It has happened to me many times that students tell me, for example, that when they learn, for example, at school, voz pasiva in Spanish, they already know the way it works because they have learned it in the language class, in the English class. So you see that I'm not saying that that is educating, but that is a way of, let's say, covering more than just the subject that you are teaching. And of course, when you teach, for example, when you make the students aware of the culture, right, the ways, the traditions, I mean, what the right register to use in different situations and all that, you are also teaching the students what? You are teaching them how to behave in certain situations. So it goes beyond the classroom and beyond the subject matter, right? And of course, if you establish in the classroom rules for turn taking, rules for interaction, let's say if you sort of create a kind of routine to get your students organized and all that, you are teaching them to become organized. So you see, that is more than learning. That would be education. And we cannot be, let's say, away from that. And we have to be aware, as you were saying. Okay, anything else you would like to add? Was that notion of education being broader than just learning new to you? Yes?
Yes.
Okay, now what elements constitute education according to what you have read? I have my own notes here. I don't want to miss anything. We've got first, the idea that these elements are in an interplay all the time, okay? Right? In constant interaction. And we may think of the learning process, what else? What else? Teacher's intention and actions. What about the learners? The culture, the personalities of the learners, right? Their background. And what about the learning environment? What are we referring to when we say the learning environment? What do you think?
It is the context in which the student is going to learn.
Okay, so for example, what's the learning environment now?
At home.
You mean right now?
Right now.
So like a digital environment.
Yes, it's a classroom online, right? Which has its advantages and disadvantages, of course. And then you may have, it could be a platform that is, let's say, not a one that is synchronized. It could be asynchronic, right? Like Google Classroom, right? That is another learning environment. And of course, each learning environment will have its characteristics, its advantages and disadvantages, and we have to think about that. If you have, for example, imagine you are supposed to give a lesson one day and the room you generally give the lesson in is, I don't know, taken because there is a special event at school. And you are given another place to give the lesson and there is no board. That is going to affect your lesson, right? Because the fact that you have planned a lesson thinking about using the blackboard as a visual aid, well, that in a way will modify what is going on, right? Because you will have to devise another way of working on that specific or character on that special occasion, let's say. All right, so those are variables that perhaps that could be included in other variables. And what do I mean by this? That sometimes everything that is completely difficult to predict and that they generally happen, things happen at school or wherever you are teaching, well, may change the course of action you have planned. And think about this. What is happening to me? Now I have to think about, let's say, changing my, let's say, a project of work with you because there are no schools available to do observation. So it's not that I can teach as I had planned. First, I had to adapt to this way of teaching and using, let's say, more, let's say, digital sources. And apart from that, I had to try to think of a way of doing, let's say, some work, but that is not exactly what I generally do with my students, that has to do with observation in secondary schools, you see? And those are variables. So it doesn't have to do with you, in fact, and your personalities are not the ones that are in a way dictating the way I'm going to work with you, or the contents, let's say, because if I have included as a content observation, I cannot in a way impose such a thing on you if there is no source. How can you observe it if there is no source? The other day I was browsing at some posts on a teacher's site that we have on Facebook. Many teachers are part of a group where they share their, let's say, questions, material, etc. And one student wrote, but she's studying, apparently she's not a teacher yet, that where she's studying, the teacher said that they have to observe lessons, and it was impossible. So they would have to find a classroom to observe any video or whatsoever on YouTube. And she was desperate, because she couldn't find a complete lesson. In fact, you will find clips, but not a complete lesson, and it's not the same when you are there. Well, how do education and learning differ?
Learning is just part of the process of education.
Okay. It's like a smaller unit, right? And education has to do with the whole person, right? It has to do with that. And why should a teacher be on a continuous personal reflection? Why do you think it's that? What did you notice?
Well, it's like you said previously, that you need to be flexible, especially if times like this happen, when you need to, let's say, adapt to the situation you're in.
That's it. Okay, and in fact, it has to be flexible and reflective. What is that? Because you should be well aware of what is happening to, let's say, not only to the learners as individuals, but also on the times you are living, right? So this will condition the way you plan a lesson or a course of action during a year. That is to say, if I intend, let's say, I intend that you give lessons in the future in, let's say, August or September, I will have to give special attention to some aspects that have to do with classroom management, for example, because that is something you will not be exposed as I wanted you to be exposed during this first half of the year. So I have to reflect on the fact that this has not been a normal right, year or what I had foreseen for a year. So I have to adapt my proposal, right, to the times that are running, okay? And what was the main concern of the American behaviorists? We're talking about the positivist school, more specifically behaviorist school. Do you remember?
They wanted to explain how a person learns by some form of conditioning or by seeing how the person behaves.
Okay, first of all, they wanted to learn how, I remember that psychology in a way was growing as a science, right? But within a very hardcore, that is to say, even though we may think of psychology as a human science, it is, let's say, being applied, or at least at the beginning of the 19th century, it was applied in following the positivist view. That is to say, there were generalizations, and they tried to find, let's say, rules that could be applied to people. And let's say, they try to work out laws or norms in terms of learning that could be, let's say, used with everybody. And those people who didn't fall into these, let's say, rules, were considered out of the system. So in a way, it was a time when human sciences and social sciences were being studied in a way using what? The positivist view. And the positivist view has to do with hypotheses and then the corroboration of the hypothesis. And can you corroborate the way people learn effectively in a classroom when you have so many different individuals? So they were fictitious generalizations.
They were basically applying the scientific method, right?
Yes, of course, right?
Okay.
Have you studied epistemology already? Have you done that?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, well, Popper's, right? Popper's refutation method, right? They were using that, and they found a lot of problems, inconsistencies mainly. And well, as you were saying, there was a generalization on the way that learning happened, and was any attention given to the environment or not? What do you think? What do you remember? In fact, the environment was not neglected. And when we think about the environment, it has to do with the people surrounding you. And in fact, the figure of the teacher and the parents was a very strong one. Why? Because they were the providers of the stimuli, right? So it's not that the notion of interaction and the environment as playing a vital role emerged with cognitivism or with interactionism or let's say constructivism. No, it was also important for behaviorists. But most of what happened in the classroom, in learning, was on the shoulders of the teacher, right? It seemed that everything that the teacher planned, if he or she did it carefully, should work or had to work in the classroom with everybody. That was the main concern. Now, what did Skinner add to the simple stimuli response conditioning? So it was, I told you something and you gave me the answers, you worked on the activities that I asked you to do, you gave me the right responses, but Skinner added something more to this, let's say, process. In the learning, it was important to give stimuli, to get the right answer from the students, and what else? Do you remember, Pavlov? What else?
Honestly, you kill me.
Well, in fact, he said that it was let's say, important to give reinforcement. That is to say, give feedback, and of course a positive one where learning was taking place. And that is what, in a way, if you think about the dog of Pavlov, he got what he wanted, the food he wanted. That would be the reinforcement. That's why he learned, right? Of course, there was a stimuli and a conditioning of his salivation and all that, but he got positive reinforcement. That is to say, once the students get it right, you have to encourage them. That was something that Skinner added, right, to behaviorist ideas. What features of Skinner's recommendations do we still keep as a routine in our classroom? Well, in fact, there are some. We still keep them. Why? Because we are dated, because we are, let's say, wicked, and we want to impose learning some in a way that is, let's say, authoritative. No, because there are some ways of behaviorism that are, let's say, good strategies to teach and to make to help learners to learn, right? It's not that we have to do away with everything that has been done because we believe it is a boogeyman. Not at all. I think that, in fact, there are many aspects of behaviorism that helped us to, let's say, conceive the classroom in a different way. But remember that whatever theory or approach we are following, we always build it on the grounds of what has been done before, what has worked and what hasn't worked, right? So is it that choral repetition was, let's say, a feature of audiolinguism? But that doesn't mean that it doesn't have to be done again, right? Or anymore. Well, I think we are running out of time. So we'll go on with this, okay? Next class, right? And I will try to start organizing the Google Classroom with you. I will be checking, perhaps what I will do is to ask you directly on the WhatsApp group. You send me your email, so I will work with the WhatsApp web on the computer, and I will paste your emails, okay?
Okay.
And again, what I'm asking you is, in fact, if you happen to know anybody from that list that we saw, that I showed you today, right, and they have not contacted me, please ask them to join the group, to send me a mail or whatsoever, and tell me if they are having any kind of, I don't know, trouble, all right? Because what I can do is to send links and, let's say, materials through mail too, all right? Yes?
Yes.
Well, so
Yes.
on Wednesday, we will be meeting at 2. Is that okay? Or it's better 2:30, okay? Do you
Okay.
agree? And perhaps
Yes.
I will try to schedule two meetings, right? Because I might take some more time to finish developing these ideas, and we have to discuss what I gave you last class. Remember there was a print screen on some contents and some activities. I would like you to go over that and tell me what you have seen in these activities and in these, let's say, tasks about the language system and about the language skills, remember?
Yes.
Yes, so that we can discuss, and that will take time, okay? So we'll finish this questionnaire and we'll check together what you have, let's say, devised as regards these tasks that appear in a textbook, all right? Based on what you read from Scrivener. All right, before I give you anything else to read, I want to make sure that you are following, you are on track. That is the idea. Okay?
Okay.
Well,
Okay.
see you then on Wednesday. And well, I will be starting the Google Classroom. All right? Well,
Right.
bye.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.